In 2025, over 75,000 people are living without shelter in Los Angeles, more than the entire population of some American towns. This isn't just a crisis, it's a breakdown of policy, housing, and healthcare in one of the richest cities in the world. Behind the Hollywood image lies a truth few dare to face, and it's growing by the day. Welcome to Globe Path Travel Documentary. You're about to witness a side of Los Angeles that travel brochures never show. In 2025, this global hotspot isn't just glitz and glam. It's ground zero for one of the worst homelessness crises in U.S. history. Tent cities stretch for blocks. Mental health systems are buckling. And in some neighborhoods, law enforcement has simply stepped back. This isn't just a city in crisis. It's a warning to the world. Stick with us as we uncover the raw truth behind the chaos. And if you believe more people need to see what's really happening, don't forget to like the video, subscribe, and hit that bell so you never miss the reality behind the postcard. Number 1. Roots of urban decay. Los Angeles didn't collapse into crisis overnight. The roots of its urban decay stretch back nearly a century, woven into the city's policies, real estate ambitions, and systemic inequalities. In the 1930s, federal housing maps introduced a practice called redlining, where neighborhoods with Black, Latino, Asian, and immigrant populations were marked in red and labeled high risk. This meant banks refused to offer loans or mortgages in those areas, effectively cutting off generations from home ownership and wealth building. These same neighborhoods were later targeted for freeway construction and industrial zoning, displacing thousands and fragmenting communities. By the 1950s and 60s, urban renewal projects, often dubbed Negro removal by critics, demolished entire blocks of working-class housing in the name of modernization. Public housing proposals were crushed under Cold War fears of socialism, and instead the city sprawled outward with single-family homes, leaving the poor behind in underfunded, overcrowded districts. Fast forward to the 21st century, and the consequences are staggering. In 2025, Los Angeles County has over 75,000 unhoused residents, with more than 46,000 in the city itself. That's more than the population of many small U.S. cities. The housing shortage is severe. LA is short by nearly 400,000 affordable units, and overcrowding is rampant, with 11% of homes housing more than one person per room. The cost of living has skyrocketed. The median rent for a two-bedroom apartment is now 3 times higher than the average monthly salary in California. Even full-time workers, teachers, nurses, delivery drivers, can't afford to live in the city they serve. This economic pressure has pushed thousands into homelessness, not because they're unemployed or addicted, but because the math simply doesn't work anymore. And then there's Skid Row, a 50-block area in downtown LA that was once meant to be a temporary zone for shelters and services. Today, it's a permanent encampment, a symbol of policy failure and public neglect. Generations of people have cycled through its streets, many of them veterans, disabled individuals, and those with untreated mental illness. What makes this even more tragic is that solutions were proposed decades ago: affordable housing, rent control, mental health infrastructure, but were either ignored, underfunded, or blocked by powerful real estate interests. The city's elite, including media moguls and developers, shaped LA into a playground for the wealthy while pushing the working class to the margins. So when we talk about homelessness in LA, we're not just talking about tents and tarps. We're talking about a century of decisions, some deliberate, some careless, that built a city where survival is a privilege, not a right.
Back, lady.
Number 2, policy problem. Los Angeles has poured billions into fighting homelessness, but the crisis has only grown. In 2025, the system isn't just overwhelmed, it's fractured. At the heart of the issue lies a web of bureaucracy, political infighting, and short-term thinking. For decades, the city and county of Los Angeles shared responsibility through a joint agency called the Los Angeles Homeless Services Authority, LASA. But after years of scathing audits and public frustration, that partnership collapsed in early 2025. The county is now dismantling the agency and starting over, despite objections from LA's mayor. The result? Confusion, delays, and a lack of unified strategy. Billions have been allocated through state initiatives like Measure H and Proposition HHH, but much of that money has been tied up in red tape. Projects take years to break ground. Shelters open with fanfare, only to close months later due to funding gaps or neighborhood pushback. And while temporary beds are added, permanent supportive housing remains painfully slow to build, often costing over $700,000 per unit. Meanwhile, city and county governments blame each other. Cities argue they don't have the resources for mental health or addiction services. Counties say they can't fund shelters without city cooperation. In the end, no one takes full responsibility, and the people on the streets pay the price. Even law enforcement is caught in the middle. Officers admit they're not solving homelessness. They're just moving people from one block to another, responding to complaints, and enforcing anti-camping laws that do little to address root causes. Some officers have even described the situation as unmanageable, with no clear direction from leadership. And then there's the political cycle. With every new mayor or council member, priorities shift. Promises are made, press conferences held, but the tents remain. The system is reactive, not proactive. It treats symptoms, not causes. In 2025, the policy problem isn't just about bad decisions. It's about a broken structure that rewards short-term optics over long-term solutions. Until that changes, the crisis will continue, no matter how much money is thrown at it. Number 3, the market pushes people to the edge. In Los Angeles, the American dream is colliding head-on with economic reality. In 2025, the average monthly rent for a one-bedroom apartment has soared past $2,800, while the minimum wage remains just $16 an hour. That means even someone working full-time, 40 hours a week, every week of the year, earns just over $2,700 a month before taxes. The math doesn't add up. And for tens of thousands of Angelenos, that gap is the difference between a roof and a sidewalk. This isn't just affecting the unemployed or those with addiction issues. More than 20% of LA's homeless population is employed. They're baristas, janitors, delivery drivers, even teachers. They clock in, serve the city, and then sleep in their cars, in shelters, or on the streets. These are the working homeless, and their numbers are growing. The housing market, driven by speculation and profit, has become a machine that rewards vacancy over occupancy. Luxury high-rises sit half-empty, while affordable housing projects stall in court battles and zoning delays. Investors from around the world buy up properties not to live in, but to hold as assets. Meanwhile, families are evicted for missing a single rent payment, and it's not just rent. Basic living costs, food, gas, childcare, have all surged while wages have stagnated. A single mother earning minimum wage would need to work over 100 hours a week just to afford a modest two-bedroom apartment in LA. That's not a life. That's a slow collapse. The market doesn't care if you're a veteran with PTSD, a student juggling 2 jobs, or a senior on a fixed income. It doesn't care if you've lived in the same neighborhood for 30 years. It only cares if you can pay. And if you can't, you're out. This is how the system pushes people to the edge, not with a shove, but with quiet, relentless pressure. And once you fall, climbing back up becomes nearly impossible. Number 4, healthcare system is incomplete. In Los Angeles, the healthcare system isn't just strained, it's fractured. For the city's homeless population, it's often inaccessible, unresponsive, and tragically, sometimes fatal. In 2025, nearly 30% of LA's unhoused residents are living with untreated mental illness, and a significant portion also struggle with substance use disorders. But the infrastructure meant to support them is overwhelmed. Mental health clinics are underfunded, addiction treatment centers are at capacity, and wait lists for psychiatric care can stretch for months. For many, the only option left is the emergency room, a place designed for acute crises, not long-term care. A recent study analyzing death records of homeless individuals in LA County revealed a chilling pattern. Delays in care, missed treatments, and early termination of services were common threads in many preventable deaths. People suffering from chronic conditions like diabetes, heart disease, or kidney failure often lacked access to medication, regular checkups, or even basic hygiene, leading to complications that could have been avoided with timely intervention. And then there's the opioid crisis. Despite the expansion of naloxone distribution programs, drug overdose remains one of the leading causes of death among LA's homeless population, especially among Black and Latino communities. Many of these deaths occur not in hospitals, but in tents, alleys, or abandoned buildings, far from any medical help. The system also fails to account for the trauma of homelessness itself. Living on the streets exposes people to violence, extreme weather, and constant stress. Yet trauma-informed care is still rare, and many providers lack the training or resources to engage with patients who have been repeatedly failed by institutions. Even when help is available, bureaucratic barriers like ID requirements, insurance paperwork, or lack of transportation can make it nearly impossible for someone living in survival mode to access care. And for those who do make it through the door, stigma often follows. Many report being treated with suspicion or indifference, reinforcing a cycle of mistrust and disengagement. In a city as wealthy and medically advanced as Los Angeles, this isn't just a gap in services, it's a moral failure. The healthcare system wasn't built for people without addresses, without advocates, without stability. And until it is, the ER will remain the last resort for thousands who deserve so much more. Number 5, when survival is distorted. In the heart of Los Angeles, survival has taken on a new meaning, one that defies morality, legality, and even logic. For thousands living on the streets in 2025, the choices they make aren't about right or wrong, they're about staying alive. In the shadows of downtown, prostitution isn't always a profession. It's a transaction for safety. Women, many of them victims of domestic abuse or trafficking, trade their bodies not for money, but for a place to sleep without fear. Some are as young as 16, lured in by the promise of protection or a warm meal. Others are mothers, doing what they must to shield their children from the cold or from predators. Petty crime has become currency. Stealing food, shoplifting hygiene products, or breaking into abandoned buildings isn't about greed, it's about necessity. When shelters are full and food banks run dry, desperation takes over. And in a city where being homeless is often criminalized, even existing in public space can lead to arrest. Drug use, too, is often misunderstood. For many, it's not about getting high. It's about numbing pain. Physical pain from untreated injuries, emotional pain from trauma, abuse, or the daily humiliation of being ignored. In 2025, fentanyl and meth are rampant in LA's encampments. Not just because they're cheap, but because they offer a temporary escape from a reality that feels unbearable. Young men, especially those from marginalized communities, are increasingly drawn into gangs, not for power, but for protection. In the absence of police presence or social services, gangs offer structure, food, and a sense of belonging. It's a dangerous trade-off, but for many it's the only one available. This isn't lawlessness, it's a distorted form of survival, a system that fails to provide housing, healthcare, or safety leaves people to create their own rules. And those rules are written in fear, hunger, and trauma. What's happening in Los Angeles isn't a breakdown of morality. It's a reflection of what happens when society turns its back. When people are pushed far enough, survival doesn't look like dignity. It looks like desperation. Number 6, community and force intervention. In a city where institutions are stretched thin and trust in government is eroding, communities across Los Angeles are stepping in, but not always in the same direction. In 2025, the response to homelessness has become a tale of two cities, one driven by compassion, the other by control. In some neighborhoods, grassroots organizations are filling the void left by policy failures. Volunteers distribute hot meals, hygiene kits, and Narcan, an opioid overdose reversal drug that's become a lifeline in encampments. Mobile clinics offer basic medical care. Faith-based groups organize safe zones where unhoused individuals can sleep without fear of harassment. These efforts are often underfunded and overworked, but they're powered by empathy and a belief that dignity is non-negotiable. But just blocks away, a different kind of response is taking shape. Vigilante patrols, some armed, some masked, have begun policing their own streets, claiming to protect property and families. Videos circulate online of confrontations between these groups and unhoused individuals, sometimes escalating into violence. In wealthier districts, private security firms are hired to sweep sidewalks while residents lobby for stricter anti-camping ordinances. The message is clear: not in my backyard. This divide is also visible in city politics. Some council members push for care courts and forced treatment programs, arguing that compassion without structure is chaos. Others warn that such measures risk criminalizing poverty and stripping people of autonomy. The debate is fierce and deeply personal. Meanwhile, law enforcement is caught in the middle. Officers are often the first responders to mental health crises, overdoses, and encampment disputes, roles they were never trained for. Some express frustration, others burnout. Many admit they're not solving the problem, they're just moving it around. The result is a city split between fear and empathy, between those who see unhoused people as neighbors in need and those who see them as threats to be removed. And in that divide, the people most affected, those living on the streets, are left navigating a patchwork of kindness, hostility, and indifference. This is what happens when systems fail. The community steps in, but without unity, even good intentions can pull in opposite directions. Number 7, the real way out. After decades of failed strategies, one truth has become undeniable in 2025. You can't arrest your way out of homelessness. The real solution isn't more jail cells, it's housing. And not just any housing, but a model known as housing first housing. First flips the traditional approach. Instead of requiring people to get sober, find a job, or complete treatment before receiving shelter, it starts by giving them a safe, stable place to live. No strings attached. From there, support services like mental health care, addiction treatment, and job training are offered voluntarily. The logic is simple. It's nearly impossible to rebuild your life when you're sleeping on concrete, and the results speak for themselves. In cities that have implemented housing first at scale, like Salt Lake City and parts of Finland, chronic homelessness has dropped by over 90%. In Los Angeles, pilot programs like Inside Safe and A Pathway Home have shown promise, helping thousands transition off the streets. But the challenge is scale. LA needs tens of thousands of units, not hundreds. Experts also point to wraparound services as essential. Housing alone isn't enough for someone battling trauma, addiction, or mental illness. Programs that combine shelter with on-site counseling, medical care, and workforce development have the highest success rates. But these programs require sustained funding, trained staff, and, most critically, political will. Unfortunately, that's where progress often stalls. NIMBYism, not in my backyard, blocks new housing developments. Budget battles delay funding, and public patience wears thin when results aren't immediate. But homelessness isn't a quick fix. It's a long-term investment in human dignity. In 2025, the real way out is clear. We know what works. We have the data. We have the models. What we need now is the courage to act, not just with compassion, but with commitment. Because until we treat housing as a human right, not a reward, the cycle will continue. And the cost of inaction will only grow. This isn't just Los Angeles' story. It's a mirror held up to the nation, a city of wealth, innovation, and influence, now struggling to shelter its own. If this can happen here, it can happen anywhere. The tense, the trauma, the silence, they're not isolated incidents. They're symptoms of a deeper failure. And unless we act, this homeless hell won't be a warning. It'll be the new normal. So the question is no longer, how did we get here? It's what are we willing to do about it? If this story moved you, don't let it end here. Like this video, subscribe to Globe Path, and drop a comment below. Tell us what shocked you most. Tell us what needs to change. Because awareness is the first step, but action, that's how we rebuild.